Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137. Okay, kids, here we go. So this is Friday, May 26th into Saturday, May 27th, Memorial Day weekend, 2023. Looking through the discussion section of the Higher Summits forecast, it does talk about the snow that the Higher Summits received earlier this week, leaving some of the upper alpine regions covered in some ice and some slippery terrain up there. So from where I am here in Thornton, we're actually going to hit a freeze tonight down to 32. So that's into Friday morning, like 1 a.m. until about 8 a.m. So you can only imagine what's happening up higher. So what they're really stressing in the discussion is to pack accordingly. The winds are going to be somewhat elevated, and there's just going to be snow patches and frozen runoff from the last few days, rime and glare ice as well that have accumulated. So just be really careful. They suggest adding traction like yak tracks or microspikes. Totally cool, and that should do the trick. So milder air comes in Friday night into Saturday, which is a great thing. Looks like it's going to be a fairly clear weekend anyway. So, all right, so Friday, mostly in the clear under increasingly cloudy skies, slight chance of afternoon rain showers with a high of the mid-30s. Wind shifting north to northwest at 35 to 50 miles an hour, decreasing to 20 to 35 miles per hour. Wind chill 0 to 10 above, rising to 15 to 20 above. Friday night, in the clear under partly cloudy skies, with a low dipping into the lower 30s, then rising to upper 30s by sunrise. Winds northwest at 20 to 35 miles per hour, decreasing to 15 to 30 miles per hour. Wind chill 15 to 25 above, then rising to 20 to 30 above. And then Saturday, in the clear under partly cloudy skies, high around 50 degrees. Woo! Love it. Northwest shifting west at 15 to 30 miles per hour, decreasing to 15 to 25 miles per hour with a wind chill 20 to 30 above early and then rising. And mind you, this is only up until Saturday, so be sure to check in Saturday afternoon if you're heading out Sunday, as well as Monday. All right, have fun, everybody.
From the Woodpecker Studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
Welcome, episode 107. Charlie, have you ever done a podcast before? Is this your first time?
I have not, and if it's okay, I don't know if you guys know how to pronounce my last name. It's pretty tough.
Yeah. You better get. I mean, we always mess up pronunciation, so it may be funny, but you can tell us.
It doesn't matter. It's just a short U. It's not Buterbaugh, as a lot of people say. It's just like either Booter or Butter, some sort of boot kind of thing. It's perfect.
Booter.
Yeah, Buterbaugh.
Oh, boy.
Like, think about Buddha, like a Buddha,
Okay, so Charlie Buterbaugh.
I love it.
Oh boy, that's as the show goes on, it's going to get worse. Trust me.
Buterbaugh. That's actually cool. What's the origin of that?
It's German. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no.
A fellow German in the house.
I got two German guys on the phone here. Look out. So Charlie, we'll introduce you in a minute, but Stomp, we've been focusing on artificial intelligence and how things are moving so quickly, and like the threat that could potentially pose to the world. And we've been sleeping and not paying attention to the greater, more immediate threat of killer whales that are taking down ships I think it's in the Mediterranean.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you read about this?
I have not. Do tell.
Yeah, so I got this article, and I'll link it in the show notes. But killer whales, they're also known as orcas. You know what I'm talking about? Like the you go to Florida, and it's like the Free Willy type of fish, the big ones.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So apparently, and I don't know when this happened, but there was a well-known orca that had, I guess, been traumatized. Either it got hit by a boat or it had been somehow interacted with a boat. And the orca's name is Gladys, and experienced some collision with a boat. So she decided, she was like, I'm gonna start attacking boats. And I guess these killer whales are really like smart. So she's now training all of the younger calves that are in her pod, how to attack boats. So apparently they've sunk 3 ships so far, and they've attacked even more in I guess it's off the Iberian coast, which I don't know where that is, but
so it was a fluke.
No, it's like a
right over his head.
A fluke, whatever. But it's almost like a villain origin story. So Gladys was just swimming around minding her own business, and she got hit by a boat. It traumatized her. So now she's getting her revenge, but she's training all the other orcas on how to attack these ships.
Okay.
And now it's like this new dangerous thing. So it shows that these animals these whales can like learn from each other, and we may not be able to go in the ocean anymore. Like if they get enough strength, they might be able to take like a cruise ship down.
Well, this ties into a story that's 3 segments up here, and it's a bison calf is put down after an encounter with a park visitor. So basically a person went over to a calf and fudged around with the calf. It was stuck in water or mud or whatever. And then they had to euthanize the thing because it was starting to follow traffic and people. So there's a little bit of a correlation there, yeah?
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we'll cover that. Don't mess with the bisons. So am I doing the show intro now, Stomp, or are we doing our little riff that you wanted to do about the Smasher podcast?
Well, we can skip it. We can talk about it briefly.
All right.
We were going to do a brief little Smasher intro instead of Slash. We were going to do Smasher based upon the smashing windows of cars at trailheads lately, and in relation to our window clings. But we'll spare you the horrible humor. And but we do want to say thank you to Lynn. And Mike and Lynn came up with the idea for the window clings to tell people that, hey, there's nothing in my car, leave me alone. They are in production, and they should be done by the end of the week. So we will keep you updated. But thanks to everybody that purchased the window clings. And hopefully it'll be a quiet weekend for that nonsense.
Yeah, and Charlie, just in case you're not up to speed, there's been like a rash of like window smashings at trailheads. So people have been a lot of hikers have been leaving valuables in their vehicles, unfortunately, which does attract people to try to get in there. And what we've been telling people, and it's basically pick your poison, but we're advising people to keep their doors unlocked, make sure that they don't leave any valuables at trailheads. And in addition to that, we're offering, like any good capitalist, we're taking advantage of the situation by offering our listeners the chance to buy SLASR branded window clings, which are reusable. And it just basically just says like, car is unlocked, no valuables.
Nice.
Just to let people know, just because I feel like if you're not putting any valuables in the car and you leave the car unlocked, the chances, maybe you get vandalized, but it's better than losing like critical.
I love it. And I saw it on your Instagram page. I love the decals. And I like how you guys have like, you're marketing to your core audience as well as thieves, right? It's like,
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
because
covering all bases.
Every listener counts, even if you're a felon. So it's good. But why don't I get into the show intro here, Stomp, and then we'll move along to some more housekeeping stuff. But welcome to episode 107 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week we are joined by Charlie Buterbaugh. I hope I got that right. Director of Communications from the Mount Washington Observatory. So the observatory is a private, nonprofit, member-supported institution with a mission to advance understanding of the natural systems that create Earth's weather and climate. It serves this mission by maintaining a weather station on the summit of Mount Washington, performing weather and climate research, conducting innovative science education programs, and interpreting the heritage of the Mount Washington region. So Charlie will give us some background about the observatory's annual Seek the Peak fundraiser. He'll give us some details about the operations behind the observatory, some details about the upcoming summit opening, and more. So in addition to Charlie sitting in, Stomp has pulled even more info about places and features in and around Waterville Valley that you didn't know about, but we'll have to check out. So all this, plus we've got recent hiking updates from Black Mountain and Timber Camp. We've got recent search and rescue news, including 2 rescues on Mount Moosilauke and Mount Passaconaway. So a lot to cover here. Let's get started. I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
Excellent. I took away your let's get started, Stomp. I'm sorry.
Stole my line.
Shame.
Hey, just briefly, this marks 7 years that me and Mrs. Stomp have been up here in God's country, New Hampshire. We moved up 7 years, Memorial Day weekend, so a little bit of celebration going on this weekend.
Wow, that's
so
crazy.
That's 107. Yeah, isn't that wild?
Wow. It seems like yesterday that you guys were talking about moving up here, and it's went by quick.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Congratulations. Any regrets? No regrets, right?
Zero. It's been the best decision ever. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we've got a story here, Stomp, that you put together about New England Canine. I didn't read this one, so I don't know if you want to go ahead and cover this.
Yeah, just a brief summary. I think it's just a hat tip to New England Canine, who listeners may not know. They are a nonprofit search and rescue team who utilize canines that are trained to search primarily for missing persons and whatnot. So it's a nice article, and it goes into all their activities, and it's put out by New Hampshire Magazine. So give it a good read, because they are vital for the search activities that happen here in the state. Actually, it covers Jocelyn Stoll as well, who is pretty much commandeering the drone program. So they're actually utilizing drone technology as well within the team.
Excellent. So next up, Stomp, you pulled a story about, and I saw this on the news the other day. I thought it was really interesting. So brain implant helps paralyzed man walk again. And from my understanding of this, and you can give me more detail, Stomp, because I think you read it in more detail than I did. But my understanding is that there was an implant put into this gentleman's brain. He's paralyzed. I think he had like a spinal cord injury, and there's also some technology in his legs and his spinal cord, and apparently he can he activates the part of his brain that indicates he wants to walk, and then it somehow sends a wireless signal to those parts of his body, and it is also regenerating his nerves, I think, around that area. Is that right?
Yeah, more or less. It's called a digital bridge, and it's connecting the brain to the spine. And he wears a backpack as well as an antenna headset, and his ideas are processed in the backpack with the technology that's in there, creating spinal stimulation. But it's allowing him to stand up for extended periods of time, to ambulate with a walker at the moment, cover 300 feet or more. And they do go into the fact that he's actually able to traverse more complex terrain, including stairs. So the reason I added this to the list was because there may be hikers in the audience that are suffering from a malady like this as well. So some really neat positive news coming out of all this technology.
Yeah, you do wonder, like, are we, with things moving so quickly, are we like 5-10 years away from people that have suffered, spinal cord injuries that never thought they could walk again? Like, could they possibly, this type of technology could put them back in a place where they could actually climb a mountain?
Yeah, it looks like we're headed that way pretty quick, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So good news.
Interesting. All right. So next up, we've got Canadian wildfires continue to blaze. I guess this is in northwest Wyoming. It's flowing into at this point. So most of these wildfires are in Canada at this point. So there's 27 separate fires in Canada that are out of control. Canada. I haven't really noticed any interesting sunrises aside from that 1 week period where we had like 2 or 3 really spectacular sunrises where you could see the sun. But I'm assuming that smoke will make its way to us eventually, right?
Yeah, well, it has lessened from what I understand, but I really added this to ask Charlie if the observatory has made note of this or is watching it or has noticed anything unusual. It's an interesting story.
Yeah, definitely. Our observers have noticed it. And I think did a nice post a couple of weeks ago when we had that kind of first really interesting sunset. We noticed it at our place and saw one of our observers posted about it and made note of how the smoke had essentially traveled all the way up to the North Pole, almost to it, and then back down through Canada to us. So, and I think you're kind of seeing some of that happen with some of the changing trends in the jet stream with these kind of more wavy patterns happening and carrying smoke into places that may not have necessarily seen it as much before.
Now, when we have fires in the White Mountains, does the observatory get involved in any sort of observations for that, or is that mostly done more at the local level?
Not too much. I think that's mainly local level, but certainly like our observers are there on the summit with that great vantage point, and we'll often get called by firefighters or Fish and Game or whomever to kind of gauge, what they're seeing and just get that perspective.
Yeah, hopefully locally it'll be pretty quiet. I know, was it a year ago or 2 years ago, Stomp, we had a couple of fires that were popping up.
Yeah. I can't quite remember. I want to say they were on
it's Willie Tom Field, that area there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the eastern side of the Pemi into that range. And then earlier than that, there was the Dilly Cliffs fire.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully it stays quiet in our area, but that's interesting. All right, so next up, Stomp, we've got a story, a Nepali Sherpa. So these are the folks that work at Mount Everest and help guide people up the mountain. So this one particular Sherpa has summited Mount Everest for the 28th time.
Amazing.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. And
he's 53.
He's 53 years old, so he's probably one of the most experienced hikers in the world at this point, I would guess.
Yes. Incredible. Just to think I'm 54. I'm like, oh. I'm having a hard time going up, Moosilauke.
Yeah, exactly. And then they also do call out in this article that this season they've had 11 deaths so far on Mount Everest. So that's unfortunately a reality of this high altitude mountaineering that's involved with Mount Everest. So not a great story. I think last week we talked about the gentleman that had passed away around Camp 2, and it seems like it's not a great season this year.
Well, I don't know what the average is year to year. Does anybody here know? I'm not just they don't talk about whether that's a higher than normal or about average. I would think it's probably average, perhaps, based upon year to year. You have the avalanches and things like that. interesting.
Yeah. It's a risky pursuit. I think I'll stick to base camp at the most.
Right.
So next up, Stomp, you pulled a follow-up story of a hiker that had been killed in Washington State. So we've covered this story a couple times. This was a situation where a gentleman was camping with some friends. He decided to break away from the friends. He took his puppy for like a side hike, and they were out in the wilderness in Lewis County area in Washington State. And unfortunately, this gentleman was 49 years old, very focused on the outdoors, spent a lot of time in the outdoors. He unfortunately ran into a young couple, 20-year-old man and his 16-year-old girlfriend. And this 20-year-old was heading off to meet family and friends I think they were hunting for bear in the area. And unfortunately, it sounds like the young man mistakenly thought that the person hiking and his dog were wildlife and opened fire and killed the 49-year-old gentleman and his dog. So the family of the victim is basically saying that the law enforcement personnel did not investigate properly. Law enforcement and the district attorney basically said that, we don't have enough evidence to prosecute. The district attorney pointed the finger at law enforcement, said, look, they botched the investigation, and I don't have the evidence I need to charge this young man. Right. So it's now moved into a civil matter. The family is, I think, taking him to court for, I guess it didn't even meet the level of criminal recklessness or negligence to prosecute. So they are now, I think, taking it to civil court at this point, asking for punitive damages. And they're also going after the county employee that handled the evidence during the investigation. So should be an interesting case.
Yeah, interesting to follow. I guess they're looking at how an autopsy may have been botched or something to that effect.
Yeah.
But it's sort of interesting thinking about that, because New Hampshire does a pretty good job informing hikers of hunting season and educating hunters as well regarding the bright orange colors and whatnot to avoid a situation like this, if that's truly the case here. So I don't know. It doesn't really go into what the people were wearing as they were hiking, but it's just a little lesson there. When it's hunting season, certainly you want brighter colors.
Yeah, and clearly the family feels like there was more to this than a simple accident, and I understand, it's a difficult thing to process the loss of a loved one, and sometimes you want somebody to answer for it, and when you can't get that justice through the criminal court, then obviously civil pursuits is the next option. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, what's that sound? It must be time for the pop culture segment with Mike and Stomp.
All right, Stomp. So we got some pop culture talk here. I think the only thing top of mind, obviously, Tina Turner has passed away, and Mrs. Stomp is devastated.
She sure is. Yeah, she was a big hero for my wife, and she was dancing around the house last night and crying and singing and just going crazy. Now she wants to name the new kitten Tina.
Oh no! So my name ideas are out the window now.
She considered it, and it's in the running, but I don't know. It's a close race at the moment.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well.
But rest in peace. Did you have a favorite song from her?
I did. I actually, in my running mix a long time ago, I put, that song Simply the Best or The Best. I put that in my running mix, and I listen to that because I get sick of songs, so I have this running list, and I typically will just scroll down to the bottom of it on Spotify, and then a lot of times that song will pop in, and I was running to it this morning, and I feel like I did an 8-minute mile to Tina Turner. So thank you, Tina.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I love that song. We Don't Need Another Hero. We actually
song.
watched Thunderdome last night with Mad Max, and that's a crazy movie.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. How about you, Charlie? A Tina Turner fan?
Oh yeah. It takes me back to riding around in my mom's red Dodge Caravan. But yeah, What's Love Got to Do with It?
Yes.
Great tune. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
Stomp. I just picture you and Mrs. Stomp on a Friday night, cracking open the wine, and she just turns on Private Dancer, and then we'll keep this. We don't want to get an explicit rating, but I could just imagine. So
yeah.
So
We'll leave it to the imagination.
Yeah, exactly.
Theater of the mind.
So, but we're all in mourning with Mrs. Stomp as well. She was a great artist. So
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, Taylor Swift has come and gone. Everybody except my kids went to the concert, so I did take them to the Speak Now tour, so I've done my duty 10 years ago, so I don't have to deal with this anymore. But Stomp, you pulled a story of a dad that spent $21,000 on Taylor Swift tickets.
Yeah. Family pays $21,000 for 4 last-minute tickets to that show. I read this and I just get a headache because it's so confusing. A few of my daughters went as well, and I'm assuming that they paid a lot as well. But who in their right mind pays $21,000 for 4 tickets for an artist? I just can't get over that.
Yeah, that's
It's
lot.
a shock.
I mean, I was on throughout the day, and generally what was happening with those tickets is that they were floating around $1,100 to $1,200 for obstructed view. And then as you got closer to the concert, they dropped to around $600 or so for the obstructed view. And then you could get like floor seats and things like that. I think you could score them for about $800 by the time the show rolled around. But there was there was seats that didn't sell, which is unfortunate. And it was quite a scenario there. But I think everybody had a good time at Gillette Stadium.
Yeah, apparently still some shenanigans, though. I mean, what is StubHub? I'm a little out of the loop here, but StubHub couldn't fulfill the original order for $1,400 for these tickets. So I don't know what's going on, but there's got to be some weird things happening between Ticketmaster and all these other companies that are getting these resells. Strange. Couldn't pay me enough. You couldn't pay me $21,000 to go to a show like that. Yeah, well, I almost think what they should be doing is doing a no transfer on the tickets, or either that, or like if you want to do transfer tickets, like just add such a horrendous surcharge that it's not worth it. But somebody's making money somewhere.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
Yeah, but anyway, Stomp. So I think we are going to. Do we have to do any advertisers now? Or do we want to get right into the segment with Charlie?
Let's get to it.
SLASR's hiking topic of the week.
All right, so we're going a little out of order today, so we'll talk about recent hikes and some other topics after we wrap with Charlie. But Charlie, we want to get you on here. We're very excited to welcome you. So you're the Director of Communications at the Mount Washington Observatory. Can you give us a little bit about your background? And I'm particularly interested in your career history and how you ended up in this role. We always hear from people that are sort of talking about interest in working in the outdoor industry, but they don't know how to get their foot in the door. So can you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. I can try to be helpful. And that's a great question. We got such a thriving, exciting outdoor scene going on up here in New Hampshire in the North Country, and of course on the Maine side too, and the National Forest. But it's interesting that he just celebrated his 7-year anniversary. Literally, that's kind of tracking with our timeline too. We moved up to Maine about 7 years ago as well, I have an English degree and spent some time teaching, spent some time as a journalist, spent some time, probably too much time, in marketing in the private sector. But I learned a lot in that process. I always wanted to work for an outdoor focused or an environmentally focused nonprofit. And so, I found out about a job at Mount Washington Observatory back in 2020, right in the midst of COVID, and applied. And it was a bit of a jump for me, kind of went into a development role, so some fundraising work, but just fell in love with the organization, which has so many layers and so many stories and such a great, rich history. And here I am after about 2.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I snooped your, so I'm a recruiter by trade, so I snooped your LinkedIn account. And one of the things that stands out to me, so for people that are listening, and I say this to people all the time, and it is difficult when you're in the beginning of your career, but when you start to get some experience and you're, a couple of years into your career, if you're looking for a new opportunity, I think people tend to, with their career, sort of feel like my next move has to be like a direct path from where I am now to my next job. And I think that that's something that people sort of, they trap themselves in a prison that they don't need to be trapped into. And you can change industry focus. You can change, the core piece of your job and move around a little bit. Like, you don't need to just like lock yourself. Like, if you were in a marketing background and you didn't want to do 100% focus in marketing, you can move around a little bit inside your skill set.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And I mean, I think to your question around, kind of breaking into, a career in the outdoors, I think you're right. Sometimes we have to kind of take a jump, take a lateral move, take a chance, maybe take a little bit lower pay, but to live and work, a place that you love, I think it's definitely worth it to do that. And I think it's just important, people are going to get, no for an answer oftentimes. And you knew this as a recruiter, I'm sure, Mike. But don't be discouraged by it. Oftentimes, hiring is something that's kind of based on circumstances and timing. And so just, keep at it. But I think if you're, looking to kind of do something that you really love and be surrounded by, what you want to do in the outdoors, whether it's in, human powered sports or, weather like I am, or climate, or whatever. There's definitely lots of opportunity.
Yeah, excellent. So, Charlie, tell us a little bit about the observatory function and the history. And, from my perspective, like, I've watched a couple of videos today just in preparation for this. And one of the things I find fascinating is it's like every hour on the hour, you've got somebody going out and collecting weather data that's, and you're doing it consistently with the same tools and calibration over time. It's sort of like that show Stomp, where you have to press the numbers every hour or the island explodes. It's sort of like the same methodology. But can you talk a little bit about how long the observatory has been functioning this way, and a little bit about sort of what goes on up there at a high level? And we'll get into some more detail, but just if you could give us your sort of high level view.
Yeah, sure. So started in 1932 with Mount Washington Observatory with 4 founders. And it's been going ever since with observations every hour, even measuring temperature with the really same exact instrument. It's called a sling psychrometer. And so that consistency of data over time has built a really valuable climatology or climate record to really kind of understand, and it's valuable to researchers to be able to see that, consistent data set. It's also a story of partnership, which is really exciting. From the Mount Washington Auto Road, the Cog Railway, really helping us get our start. Our first home was in the stage office for the Auto Road, and then the Cog Railway then came along and built the observatory's first permanent home, which was year round, and we stayed there until about 1980 when the Sherman Adams building was built. And that's the building that we're now housed in. And that's, of course, owned by New Hampshire State Park. So again, another partner of ours that really helps us in terms of, being on the mountain, staying on the mountain, keeping the building up to maintenance and whatnot. So Mount Washington State Park owns the summit. We lease our space in that building. And we've got, the instrument tower that goes up and has, anemometers measuring wind. Our observers go outside and measure temperature, look at cloud activity, look at visibility. They do educational programs and research as well. And of course, they're forecasting, which you guys have been so kind to really support us with in terms of getting the word out about the Higher Summits forecast, which is a 48-hour forecast that's really very specific to the higher summits in the presidential range because the weather's so variability at that elevation. So really helps people understand what's going to be happening above tree line.
Interesting. Right. And then Mount Washington has been, they've had a couple of key historical events around wind speed, air temperature, wind chill, and I know one happened recently this winter with the wind chill. But can you talk a little bit about some of those big milestones that the observatory has been part of?
Sure. Yeah. So it's interesting. 1934. So 2 years after our founding, it was on April 12th when the 231 mile per hour world record wind was measured with an anemometer by our observers at the summit. And that definitely, I think, brought a lot of notoriety, recognition, and importance to the work that our observers were doing at the time. It was interesting that same year, the negative 47 degrees Fahrenheit air temperature was measured. And then it took, I think 89 years until this past February when that was measured again with the same instrument. So negative 47 Fahrenheit is our coldest air temperature. And as you mentioned, Mike, we also reported, I should say, a negative 109 wind chill back on February 3rd or 4th of this year.
We remember. That was pretty intense.
Yeah. Wow. There was a 171 mile per hour wind that was measured in 2019. So that's a more recent, really high wind speed that was measured as well.
Wow. That is interesting. And then, so over time, the observatory's been able to identify some climate trends. And I know that, you have observed that the snow season is shortening, and you've seen a little bit of an increase in air temperature over time. Is there any other significant research that the observatory's been involved with, or can you talk a little bit about what the larger climate community does as far as relying on the data from the observatory?
Sure. And I should have said this earlier, but I just definitely want to give recognition to our weather observers who are living at the summit. And I don't live at the summit. I get there as much as I can, and have spent many nights kind of talking with our observers and our director of research, who's Jay Broccolo, and learned a lot in talking with him. But yeah, I think, we're definitely noticing some changing trends, and doing continued research as those questions come up is probably the most important point. But I think, we're seeing the sort of average air temperature warming very gradually, and particularly within the last 10 to 15 years. We're seeing an earlier arrival of spring, and we're also seeing about a quarter of degree per decade increase in average temperature in spring as well. So spring seems to be kind of like a focus season that we're really looking at. Definitely losing a little bit of the snowpack, but it's interesting because, this morning they got another 1.5 inches of snow, -2 wind chill. So it's really interesting to look at. I think one of the other trends that they're seeing is what we're calling rain on snow events, where it's happening more frequently, where you'll get liquid precipitation falling on frozen precipitation, and this is of course making the job of the folks over at the Mount Washington Avalanche Center even more important and challenging too, because they're just seeing that stability of the snowpack is decreasing a little bit. So definitely looking into our research and doing more research into understanding what's also sometimes called winter whiplash, where you're in winter for a stretch of time, and then all of a sudden you have a significant warm up, which we saw in the end of January this year. And then all of a sudden that just absolute plummet down to record cold temperatures in early February. So definitely some swings are taking place.
Yeah, you're right, because I remember posting a couple of comments in January saying we need more snow, and then pretty quickly it did follow up, but it's been a little bit of a up and down season. And I always get up to the Mount Washington area on Memorial Day weekend, so I'm heading up to Maine tomorrow, and then probably hiking Mount Washington on Saturday morning. So what I've noticed over the years is it's hit or miss. Sometimes you can't even get up there because there's snow still, and we've had a couple of seasons where I remember it was no problem and it wasn't that much snow. So we'll see how it is on Saturday when I get up there.
Absolutely. We had, that interesting situation earlier this month too, right? Where There was like 3 inches of rain, which created some washout for the auto road, created a little havoc for them. But they were just incredible in terms of responding quickly and getting the road repaired, and we're able to open on time, like May 13th, which was really great for us. And that was followed by I think it was 12 inches of snow or something. So they got this washout, they got buried in snow. So it's definitely an interesting enterprise to try to open the mountain, for the summer in the warm season.
Yeah, can you talk about that? So this coming weekend, the summit building's opening, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be open. I just talked to Patrick Hummel today. He's the park supervisor up at Mount Washington State Park. And yeah, they are planning to be open tomorrow at 9 a.m. And I know that it's been a lot of work in the lead up to that.
Yeah. There's been years where I've gone, I don't know if it was the very first day, but I tend to get up there on the Saturday of Memorial Day. And I walked in at 9 o'clock in the morning and had a cup of coffee and been I think I'm the first person here before the cog gets up there and everything. So
nice.
It's fun. But can you talk a little bit about the work that goes into it? I know you've talked a little bit about, so you've got to coordinate with the COG, you've coordinate with the auto roads, you coordinate with the New Hampshire State Park representatives. How is the planning and communication handled amongst the various stakeholders tied to the summit?
Sure, absolutely. There's a lot of communication that's happening on a day-to-day basis. I mean, even with the auto road washout that happened earlier this month, Patrick up at State Park gave us a call. We both got in touch with the COG Railway. We knew we weren't going to be able to do our shift change on the auto road, which was the next day. We always take the auto road for our shift change, which happens every Wednesday. So our observers coming up, relieve those who have been on the summit for a week. They have a meeting, and then, the other observers go down for a week off the mountain. But yeah, we were able to contact the COG Railway, reroute our shift change over to the other side of the mountain. They helped us get up with it was really just a special trip that they took for us with this giant snowblower on the front of the train. It was pretty amazing to clear the tracks up above tree line. But the state park building, serves an important public safety role. Just tons of work as they kind of get their systems up and running for the season, including, water systems, bathrooms, and all that good stuff. And, hikers definitely rely on that, to replenish their water supply, take a rest. Sometimes they have a bump or bruise they need to get, some first aid for, just really get some respite. It's important, I think, to note that the state park building closes at 6 p.m. So hikers shouldn't rely on it, as they should really treat Mount Washington Summit as if it's any other summit in the White Mountains, right? Without kind of an improved structure, but it's there when it's open, and it's definitely an important place to be. But, and then they definitely serve as an important search and rescue hub, when incidents do happen. But yeah, just a lot of work that the state park does to maintain the building. And then, the auto road, the state park and the observatory are working together constantly throughout the winter on transportation in terms of making sure our observers are getting to the summit and keeping that weather and climate record consistent and continuous. Yeah,
and I definitely want to dive into the more details about sort of a day in the life of the weather observers. But before we get into that, I did want to talk about the biggest fundraiser for the observatory. So I think it's your primary fundraiser. So Seek the Peak is going to be on Saturday, July 15th, which from my understanding is this is the best way to support the Mount Washington Observatory to help sustain education and scientific programs. Can you talk a little bit about Seek the Peak and highlight some of the events that go on around Seek the Peak?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is a vital fundraiser for us. It's definitely a great way to support the observatory in addition to, just becoming a member over at mountwashington.org. But this is our 23rd annual Seek the Peak. So it's been going on for a while. It's a hike-a-thon. And so essentially, any hiker of any ability level, you don't have to hike Mount Washington. You sign up at seekthepeak.org. You get a personal fundraising page. You can send that link and share it with, friends, family, colleagues, really ask for them to support your hike, whether you're going to, hike up Tuckerman Ravine Trail, or if you just want to do, a more, low key, hike up Boulder Loop, or whatever it is that you want to do. But all of that supports the observatory. So, and as our hikers, our participants raise funds, they earn gear. So they get, like an awesome locally designed T-shirt designed here in the Mount Washington Valley, Cotopaxi backpack. They get entered into an awesome gear raffle that's supported by the Get Outside Tour. WMWV is going to be there. This is all happening then. So the sort of culminating event is July 15th at our Après hike party. Okay. So most people come and hike either Friday or Saturday, but you can really hike anytime. It's not kind of like, strict as far as like when and where you can hike, but it's a great gathering of the outdoor community. So people will join us at the Après hike party from 3 to 6 p.m. on July 15th. That's at Great Glen Trails, just at the base of the Mount Washington Auto Road. We'll have live music, food trucks. As I said, WMWV, Roy Prescott will be there, the skiing DJ. Nice. And should be a good time.
Yeah, and I saw that you guys are doing so if you're interested in this, but you don't have anybody that can make it, or you're just looking to get involved, and you don't have anybody in the area, say you just moved up to New Hampshire and you want to get involved, you have a new process where you can sign up for Hike and Make Friends program, and then actually you also have these PACE labels, which is interesting, Stomp. So they have the Gentle Breeze hikers, which I'm assuming are the slower hikers. You've got the near Gale hikers, which are probably the middle of the road. And then you've got the Hurricane Force hikers, which are the speed demons. Right. So you can sign up for, whatever pace makes sense for you. If you don't have a group that you're involved with, you can go on to the Seek the Peak event page and look at the Hike and Make Friends section.
That's cool. That's so awesome. Thank you so much. It's a great summary. And just one more note that the Appalachian Mountain Club will be there Saturday morning at Peakam Notch Visitor Center to help people also look at maps, define a route that it's right for them. And when you register, you also get a voucher for a food truck at the Après hike party. Après hike party.
Okay, yeah, that's a tough one. And then you've done a lot of hiking in and around the White Mountains, but you said you're going to be doing the hike. You're going to do a hike up Tuckerman for the first time?
Yes. Yeah. My first summit of Mount Washington. I'm planning that for July.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. You feel prepared?
I think I still have a bit of, fitness to kind of take care of, and definitely to kind of upskill a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of hiking, but I definitely need to train up a little bit.
Yeah. Do you know, and you probably haven't got there yet, but so you're going to go up the head wall on Tuckerman, and then when you get to Tuckerman, are you going to continue up the cone on Tuckerman, or are you going to wrap around and go up, what is that, like Crawford Path?
Lionhead?
Crawford Path, yeah.
Right. I'm not sure, but if you guys have any advice for me, I would definitely take it.
I'd say, if you're feeling okay, I'd keep going up the summit cone. The problem with once you get above the head wall, the trail going up Tuckerman is there's a lot of big boulders, so it does get it gets more difficult than actually the head wall, in my opinion, just because it's going across all these big boulders. So sometimes it is easier to sort of stay, head towards Monroe and then come up that Crawford Path section. But it'll really it's a more gentle climb, I guess. But I don't know, Stomp, what do you think? You just go straight up the gullet?
I would just stick to the car, Charlie. Just go up Auto Road. You're good to go. Don't worry about the hiking thing. We'll drive you up.
Drive up and hike down, maybe, right?
Yeah. Somebody shut off his microphone. So, but that'll be good. Are you going with a big crew?
I don't think so. I think I'll probably, either go with one friend, definitely somebody else. And, I just being immersed in the observatory, I feel like I know the tools, and of course, looking at, the hike safe, 10 essentials and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, I think I'll have a companion.
Yeah, no, that'll be great. And then that's a great trail. And the nice thing about that is you're never going to be by yourself, which is good.
Nice.
Nice. Excellent. So, Charlie, let's talk about the weather observers. How many workers and volunteers are typically up on the summit at any one point in time?
Sure. Yeah. So we typically have 3 weather observers at any given point. So 2 daytime observers and then 1 night observer who's up alone all night for 12 hours, typically from like 5:30 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. That night observer is important because they write the morning higher summits forecast, which is really kind of like the authoritative forecast for the day or the next 48 hours. I should say they're not always alone. They have Nimbus the cat to keep them company, which is great. And then, we usually always have 2 volunteers on each shift, and that shift, again, is from Wednesday to Wednesday. And then we always typically have an intern as well, and our intern program is really important. It's usually, somebody who's either finishing their undergraduate or just finished either in, meteorology, climate studies, sometimes geology or engineering too. But yeah, it's a great staff. And then the state park folks are there too, helping to maintain the building. And oftentimes there's, kind of a family style. There's always a family style dinner in the evening. It's pretty much at 6 p.m. sharp. And our volunteers, who have actually been volunteering with us for many years, sometimes decades, usually have some great, unique recipes, and it's a little different cooking at 6,288 feet in elevation too. So they help out and make sure that our observers are well nourished.
And do you find that with the observers, does it tend to be that they have long tenures and they stay in the role for a long time, or is it sort of a stop in their career?
That's a really good question. I think that it has often been something where it's like a 2 to 3 year tenure. Many of our observers, grew up, reading meteorology textbooks and hearing about the observatory and kind of developed a dream. Hey, that would be so cool to work there at the home of the world's worst weather. And so, it's definitely an aspiration, and they get here and, it's a week on, week off, consistently. So sometimes I think it can make it a challenge to, do things like start a family. But I think that we're seeing with some of our real kind of like recent team is building some longer tenure and hiring some folks who are really interested in doing the research and kind of looking at some of the trends at a kind of a longer term. And of course, how research goes. It's like, you finish a research project, quote, finish, and then there's more questions and there's more opportunity to look deeper into, things like how does the temperature change along, the gradient or topography as elevation increases. And all of these questions just beget more questions. And so I think we're starting to see a little longer tenure in some of our observers, which is really exciting.
Got it. And do you know, and you may not know this, but if just for our younger listeners that sort of haven't started their college search yet or anything like that, is there, and I would assume that there's many great meteorology programs and associated programs, but do you have a particular number of colleges and universities where you've seen interns and people come from, or is it just a wide variety of schools?
It's pretty wide variety. Plymouth State's got a great program. Penn State's got a great program. We've recently started working with Howard University and Jackson State.
Yep.
So some historically black universities, which is absolutely awesome. And so we've got an internship program with them and really starting to kind of partner in that regard. But yeah, it definitely, I would say, runs the gamut in terms of folks coming from, Virginia Tech, various universities around the country. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, that's great to hear. I always get scared that it's going to be like MIT and Harvard and those schools getting, they're great schools, but sometimes they can be so hard to get into that it's like, but it's a wide variety, it sounds like. Can you talk about the volunteer program? And so it sounds like there's like 4 or 5 volunteers that are up there at any point in time?
Yeah. Typically it's 2 volunteers. I think sometimes 3.
Okay.
But there's a forum on our website on mountwashington.org where people can submit an application. The summit is a place where we really look for people who have an interest in weather, an interest in the outdoors, can really work well together with our observers. It's not really, that much criteria involved. It's just really, people who are enthusiastic about the work that we do. So anybody can submit an application, and if you're accepted, you get to live on the summit for a week, which is pretty cool.
Wow, that's awesome. And then can you talk?
Mike's a good cook. he can sign up.
I am a good cook. So I did actually, I was hiking. I went up, I was up in the summit in like February or early March. And there was a nice lady outside walking around. And I went over to her to just say hello, good morning. And she was there volunteering. And that was one of the things she said. She's like, I'm known as a very good cook. So I think that they've asked me back multiple times.
There you go.
Which was great. So what about the education and summer adventure programs, Charlie? Can you talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, sure. So we, after the COVID years, this past winter, we were able to resume our EduTrips, which is a one-night experience. It came back this past winter as a Monday to Tuesday. And so people are able to sign up for that, support the observatory in the process, which is great, come up to the summit, ride the snowcat, and stay for the night and really experience the weather. And, I was actually up for one in, I think it was mid-February or so. And it's just a great experience where, you get that sort of 24 to 30 hours or so. You often get to experience just the wide range of weather that Mount Washington experiences. We had like a pretty warm day when we went up on a Monday, and then like a low pressure system came in and we had some decent snowfall, and the next morning the visibility was down to 25 or 30 feet. And there's always a program that's involved. So whether it's understanding mountain weather, looking at climate, maybe it's backcountry hiking, and just developing those skills. So just a great opportunity to get to the observatory, learn some new material and hang out. And then we also have Arctic Wednesdays, which is an opportunity for teachers to come up to the summit just for the day, and kind of learn about our work. They connect live with their students, via Zoom, just in their classroom, and kind of really get to learn a lot, and then take that back to their classrooms. And then we have virtual programs, including our Science in the Mountains program. We do other distance learning programs with area schools. A really cool thing that's just starting actually tomorrow is I think it's Groveton Middle School out of northern New Hampshire is taking a field trip up on the COG to the summit to visit our weather station. We were able to partner with the COG Railway, and really looking. That's one of the things that our executive director Drew Bush is very intent on, is increasing access to the summit and making sure that kids, from all over New Hampshire are able to have an experience and see the weather station, see what the summit of Mount Washington is like.
That definitely beats the old bus ride from Lynn English High School to the Museum of Science. I would trade that any day.
Yeah. And it's great to hear that, because a lot of times, like, we're in the hiking community, Charlie, and people tend to be purists. They're like, oh, it's an abomination that there's buildings on top of the summit, and and it is what it is. Like, you can't really go back in time and change history, and it's good to know that, like, you're giving back to students, and it gives the thing about having the access to a place like Mount Washington is that it does expose people that might not otherwise ever get the chance to go on a mountain. They get to experience what it's like, and it might plant that seed for them to start getting curious to say, like, okay, now I'm going to go and try to hike something that is a little bit more remote. So it's not all just about, leave no trace and that type of thing. And we talk about this a lot around, the work that, the various stakeholders on the summit do to support search and rescue when it's needed. So it's great to know that students are getting a chance to be exposed to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say that, with the COVID years after, now that we're out of that, those years, we really had to take a lot of our education programs virtual. And, we had been doing that for a little while, so it worked well. But now that we're beyond that, we're really going to be investing heavily in our educational programs. And we're going to be hiring somebody, an education coordinator pretty soon here, and really, get out into, after school programs, enrichment, field trips, as I said. And we kind of did a road show earlier this year and went around to area schools, and there's just a lot of demand from administrators for us to come in and deliver programs and really help people understand, the unique weather that Mount Washington experiences. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it's great to hear that. And then Charlie, I did want to talk a little bit about sort of the data tools that are available for the public. So you talked about the Higher Summit forecast. There is also on the website, there's live weather cameras. There is a feature that you offer for people to get automated text updates on the forecast as well as the current conditions on the summit. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other data tools that are available? I know Stomp always talks about the Mesonet system, and you've got a variety of different research projects that you've highlighted as well on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just important that, we all, kind of see hiking in the White Mountains, and you guys can vouch for this as, something where we all just really need to take care of ourselves and look ahead at what's happening. And so we've got the 48-hour forecast, as you said, Mike, at mountwashington.org, and that's our Higher Summits forecast. And reading the forecast discussion is a really important part because it not only tells, what our observers think will happen, but also what could potentially happen. So some of the sort of unforeseen things that, weather dynamics can create based on whatever system is approaching us. So that, when people get above tree line, they don't find they're completely in the midst of a heavy storm unexpectedly. So the forecast is key. As you said, we offer this automated text service now. So if you text to 603-356-2137, that's our main number. You text that number, you can text weather, you can text forecast, and you get an immediate reply with a synopsis of what the conditions are at the summit at that time, and then also what the forecast is. And that's a little better when you're maybe out in the backcountry a little bit, your signal is a little low, but oftentimes a text can go through, so you can at least get, kind of a brief version of the forecast. And then, the weather cams are great. There's a weather camera that's at the top of Wildcat that looks at the kind of eastern flank of Mount Washington. There's a camera that is, looking out over our observation deck. And then there's also one that's kind of right on the tower, which is one of our newest cameras. That's really super clear. And, so if you're just kind of getting a sense for what's going on at the summit, if you're just curious, those are a great way to kind of get a window to Mount Washington. But also, looking at that Wildcat camera, I think that's a good way to kind of get a sense for what the conditions are going to be.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. And I don't think to look on those cameras the last time I looked at the cameras, it was a big the day that I think it was maybe the afternoon before the wind chill event, somebody had actually summited and hiked. So people were aghast that somebody had actually made it up to the summit in that cold weather. And he came walking by on the webcam. But I go on there occasionally, but it's been a while, so I'm going to check that out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
The general guidelines around search and rescue. So Stomp and I have talked about a number of cases where the COG or the summit staff have had to step in and help with search and rescue. But generally, you touched on this before, generally you should assume that Mount Washington is no different than any other summit, and that you can't rely on any of the personnel to sort of rescue. You're not going to be let inside the buildings or anything like that, because it just is not something that's feasible for anybody. But can you sort of expand on that a little bit around search and rescue policies?
Yeah, absolutely. And just have to give so much credit to the White Mountain National Forest, New Hampshire Fish and Game, the Appalachian Mountain Club, and then all the Mountain Rescue Service and volunteer organizations that just do so much, to really help out when incidents happen. And they do happen, right? And sometimes it's not somebody's negligence. Somebody just slips and breaks an ankle and, needs support, needs help. But yeah, definitely important to assume that it's going to take a while based on the conditions for, volunteer rescuers and others to get to you. It's, I think just talking to the Fish and Game organization a little bit last year, I think it's something like on average of 200 incidents or so per year in the White Mountains, and those are rescue missions. But yeah, it's often hard. The Appalachian Mountain Club often steps in, because they're often up there, in the huts and higher summits to kind of help out. But depending on the time of year, it could take a while for rescuers to get to you. The observers don't really support rescue missions directly. They're really focused on, observing the weather, forecasting. Of course, if there's, a situation where absolutely called upon, we would partner with Mount Washington State Park, to really help somebody get down the mountain. And that's really, I think, the state park's role in search and rescue is, if an incident happens on Mount Clay or somewhere near Mount Washington, the idea is to get them to the state park, stabilize, and then get them down the mountain as soon as possible.
Got it. Yeah, and hopefully we won't have too many of those in the future, but it does unfortunately happen occasionally. But that's, it's good to know, and it's a good reminder for people to, they have to be self-reliant up there.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, look at the Hike Safe program. Know your 10 essentials. Tell people where you're going. And one of the greatest ways to learn about this, you guys have hosted Ty Gagne on here, which is awesome. That was a great podcast. But his 2 books, The Last Traverse and then Where You'll Find Me. Yeah, thank you. Are just incredible, insightful, ways to just look at and learn about, how decision making has sometimes caused people to get in harm's way. Yeah. Excellent.
All right. So listeners, we're all going to do Seek the Peak on July 15th and help the observatory raise funds for all of their missions. And then in addition to that, Charlie, you can sign up for membership for the observatory, right? An annual membership?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You can go to mountwashington.org and contribute $5 a month or $60 a year. And then you get the benefits of our membership, which includes a subscription to our member journal, which is called Windswept, where we include stories about our observers, the work they do, weather trends, weather stories, and just an overall update on the mountain, plus admission to our museum, a discount on our shop on mountwashington.org. And also access to 300 science museums through the ASTC program. So there's some cool benefits there.
Awesome. And then there's also an online store where you can buy gear, right?
Yeah. We've got, if you go to mountwashington.org, right on the top right, there's a shop button. So yeah, definitely some cool stuff there.
All right. Well, the observers are coming out of the winter. We've got the opening this weekend. Me and Stomp are going to be on the Mount Washington Alton Weagle coming up this weekend too, I think. And then we've got the Mount Washington Road Race. We've got the various bicycle races and all the different rides. So this is the busy time of the year for the summit. So the quiet, peaceful observatory experience is going to change quite a bit in the next couple of months, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's... they're all taking a deep breath tonight, knowing that, everything opens up tomorrow and all of a sudden going to have 1,000 people on the summit each day.
Yes. Yeah.
So Charlie, can you get us to the front of the line when people are going to take a picture at the summit sign? We drop your name.
I could absolutely. Yeah, put a word in, definitely.
That's funny.
Pardon me.
I've always said that's always a common complaint is the hikers are like, well, if I hiked up, I should be able to cut the line and go straight to the sign. And then, the people that want visiting on their cars. There's enough. I actually enjoy standing in the line. I've met people, you have a conversation. Sometimes, you can, if you run into someone that took the cog up and you tell them you walked up, they're like, you look like a hero. So it's an ego boost. So everybody wait in line.
You hiked up this?
Yeah, you're crazy.
I've had that
before. So Charlie, we'll let you go have dinner in a moment, but I did want to close out with, we want to talk about the cats a little bit. So you've got Nimbus, that's the current summit cat up there. In the past, have you always just had one cat, or is it multiple cats up there in the past?
Yeah, so it's a long-standing tradition to have a resident cat at the summit. Before Nimbus, it was Marty.
Yep.
And Marty was up there, I think, for a long time. I forget how many years.
Wow.
But yeah, and I think that there definitely has been times when there's been multiple cats. Right now, I think we're feeling good about one, just to kind of take really good care of Nimbus. And he's kind of getting more comfortable with going outside these days. Of course, the weather's changing and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, long history, just, going up there in the 1930s and 40s and, taking supplies up with packboard and, not wanting to have all of, your supplies, eaten through by mice. The cats have always been great mousers and helpful to us, an important part of our staff.
That's clever. Wow.
Yeah.
Never thought of that.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, anything else, Charlie? Did we miss anything? Stomp, any questions?
I had one question. We're all familiar with the stories of the early structures up there getting blown away. And if you go up there now, you see the old house with the big giant chains holding it down. Has there been a more recent story of, say, any form of like structural failure or anything that got you guys or the observers a little nervous inside there with the weather?
I mean, I think the most recent example, which you guys probably know about and some of your listeners do too, was that February 3rd and 4th record cold. One of the doors on the tower, one of the exterior doors has a small latch. And I think our two observers who were on duty at the time, Francis Tarazowitz and Karl Filipoff, great guys, they were up a level and opening the door to go out onto the observation deck and kind of created a vacuum. And the latch just broke, the door flew open. Oh, wow. And so at that point, there was, negative 40 degree air just like blowing into the tower. So it was definitely a critical situation.
No kidding.
And,
wow.
The state park guys came over, helped us, essentially prop it closed, with the 2x4 until they were able to kind of like fix the latch. But I think that definitely created some major anxiety, but thankfully everybody was able to work together and correct the situation. Yeah.
Wow. Do you know like how thick are the walls? I mean, is it all concrete and concrete rebar? What is
it? Is
okay.
Yeah, and I think it's like 3 to 4 foot thick concrete, kind of built to withstand like 250, 300 mile per hour winds.
It's like a military bunker. It's amazing.
Yeah,
wow.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for that, because I was always curious about that. I'm like, wow, that must have been built to withstand whatever, Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll definitely include all the details in our show notes around the ways that people can support the observatory, and then we're going to be putting in a plug later on for Seek the Peak again, and we'll continue to push that over the coming weeks. But we appreciate you joining us, and we'll let you head out of here and go enjoy your dinner.
Thank you, Mike and Stomp. You guys are the best. I love the podcast, so please keep it going. And thanks for all your support of the observatory. And just head over to seekthepeak.org. And if you have any questions, just give us a call over here at the Obs.
All right. Thanks, awesome. Charlie. We'll see. We'll do it again.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Moving on, shall we?
Moving on. Yeah. Thank you very much, Charlie. So we skipped over
coffee donations. Let's start.
Yeah, we skipped over all that stuff, so we got to do some advertisers too. So go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a couple donations. Someone who knows who that is donated 3, saying they love the show. Mr. Huck, John Huck, donated 5 coffees. Thank you, John. Bob L. donated 5. And then the Griffins donated 3 coffees, and they said that they love the addition of the Mount Washington Observatory forecast to the show. So that's very cool. Thanks for the donations, everybody. And our first sponsor is 48 Peaks Alzheimer's. Hike to fight Alzheimer's with 48 Peaks. Join over 450 hikers this summer as we hike New Hampshire's 4,000 footers, or create your own hiking adventure from a 52 with a view to a Prezi Traverse, or climb your favorite mountain. Weather permitting, teams will be hiking June 10th, so they can join us for our annual hiker celebration party at Reckless Brewing, and you're welcome to join us. Go to alz.org/48 peaks. That's alz.org/48, the number 48 peaks, for all the details. And then we have
Stomp. You're before you go on to the next one, you're gonna be at Reckless on the 10th.
Yes, sir. I'll be there around 3ish, playing music and emceeing more or less. So
all right, I'm coming too, so I'll see you there. So
great. Yeah, I'm hoping the weather's good so we can get out back where we did the 100 100,000 show at the Pine House.
Yeah, which would be good. I'm pretty sure I'm going. I have a graduation party to go to that weekend, but I think Reckless is on a Saturday and then the grad party's on a Sunday. So we'll be partying, Stomp.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That'll be a nice time.
Yep.
All right. Vaucluse gear. Want ventilation and less sweat on your back when backpacking? Check out Vaucluse's backpack ventilation gear. Back sweat sucks in all types of weather and hikes. It's uncomfortable and a risk factor, causing your core temperature to fluctuate if it doesn't evaporate off your back. Vaucluse's ultralight ventilation backpack frame is an accessory that installs in your favorite 18-liter to 55-liter pack, creating a ventilating airflow gap between you and your pack. They're releasing their Generation 2 frame right now. It weighs only 4 ounces, which is pretty light, and handles the heaviest pack loads. So whether you're in hot or cold temps or have a pack with a curved frame, the ultralight ventilation backpack frame is a real game changer. And I'm seeing these things like selling like hotcakes. I'm seeing them all over the web.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
So I went hiking with my daughter Caroline and her boyfriend Devin, and Caroline got to use hers for the first time. Yeah. And she was like, she loved it. She's like, first of all, like I didn't even feel it, but she's like, I definitely didn't feel sweat. I was hiking and like I was moving pretty good, like no sweat at all. And then what I would do is with this thing when you're using it is it basically gives you like a half inch of separation, and then if you're up above tree line and you're in a windy situation and you're standing still hanging out, like just angle yourself so that the wind is sort of like blowing between your pack and your back, and it's going to even, you're not that you're sweating at all anyway, but it's going to cool your back off even more. So for the amount of money that this thing costs and the benefit that it gives you, and it doesn't weigh anything, it's a no-brainer for people, especially like the winter hiking. It's good, but these day packs, it's a perfect use case for it.
Yeah. So by the time you take your pack off to stop and eat your lunch, you're dry already back there, more or less.
You never even sweat in the first place. It's unbelievable. And it's also like once it locks in, I even have to think about it. It's going to be on there for the rest of the summer.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, you can visit vauclusegear.com and order the ventilation frame today. And they're a huge fan of the podcast. Thank God. Really appreciate their sponsorship. And because of that, you can use a promo code SLASR for a $10 discount, SLASR. So there you go.
Very good. Very good. So, Stomp, you drinking anything tonight?
Yeah, I do. I got something. It's I'm trying to keep the historic beer talk happening here while you're losing all your weight.
Yeah. I know. I'm down 15 pounds.
That's amazing.
Yeah. 5 pounds to go for the goal weight. Wow.
And then your goal is to keep it there, maybe?
I'm going to build back better, Stomp. I'm going to start lifting weights and getting jacked.
Make Mike great again.
Well, I don't know about that, but no, I don't know. I'm feeling good. I mean, feel like I'm running faster and stuff, so it's good. But what are you drinking?
I'm drinking an Austin Street Brewery double IPA, and it's 8%. And I looked it up, and it's from a brewer in Portland, Maine, and it's not bad. A little bitter, unfortunately, so that's not my favorite type of thing. It tastes more like a regular IPA than it does a double. Yeah, doubles tend to be a little sweeter, but not bad.
No.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I will say that I'm going up to Maine tomorrow, I think, and I brought all the alcohol that is needed to make Mai Tais, so you'd be proud.
Nice.
It's like dark rum, white rum, orange curacao, and then some syrup. I don't know. I don't know. I have the recipe.
It's complicated. There's so many different things in there. But yeah, let me know how it tastes. I'd be curious to see what it tastes like.
I'll send you some pictures if I do fall off the wagon. So, but I'll be back to the beer. 2 more weekends, I'll be back to the beer. So
yeah, there you go. Any hikes lately?
Any hikes? Yeah. So I had to run some errands. I was doing a little car shopping. I went to check out a car up near Haverhill, New Hampshire. So I went over to Black Mountain with my daughter and a boyfriend were with me, kicking around the idea of getting a car, but I'm still working on that. But we did Black Mountain, so I was like, let's just do a 52 with a view. We'll get both of you guys sort of eased back into hiking. Caroline's taking a little bit of time off. She was hiking in Hawaii, but it's a different vibe. So we went to Black Mountain. I didn't do the lime kiln last time I went there. So when you and Mrs. Stomp had gone, I was like, I got to check these out. So we went up to the summit and then headed down, went over to the lime kiln. So these things, we've talked about them before. They're like probably 30 feet tall. And Huge. It's like a kiln that was used to basically turn limestone into like quick lime and whatever they use it for industrial purposes. So it's just sitting in the middle of the woods. It's just giant smokestack that's probably like 30 or 40 feet tall.
Beautiful. A little bit of history there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So that was cool. I highly recommend that. And then I'll be getting out on, I think Saturday, I'm going to go climb Mount Washington and then probably be doing some local stuff around Maine.
Saturday you're going up?
I think I'm going Saturday, yeah.
Awesome.
If you want to meet me, you can meet me.
I'm going to lay low. I got the rescue vibes, but I appreciate the invite.
I might need a rescue. You never know.
Hey, I'll see you then.
I'm going to be knocking on the observatory door like, hello.
I think Mr. and Mrs. Stomp are planning Moosilauke for Friday.
Great.
Which is good. We haven't been up there in quite a while. But yeah, have fun. That'll be great. The weather's going to be awesome.
Yeah. You got out, you were over in Waterville. Is that right?
Yeah. Last Friday we zipped up to Timber Camp. We were hemming and hawing about going to Greeley, but we really like it up there. It's very remote and it's got a neat vibe. It's got a Western vibe out there. I love it. Yeah. It's super cool. I don't know. I'm still planning to do my little Mount Kangamangus bushwhack. I did some more recon while I was up there, but Saturday was rough. We had a training and then there was a rescue that evening, and I'm telling you, dude, I was so exhausted. I think I was just dehydrated. It took me until, say, like Tuesday or Wednesday before I could even run again from Mount Washington. I was wiped. It was so weird.
I had like an illness over the weekend. I was all like coughing and stuffed up and stuff. So I had like something weird too. Same type of thing. Like I ran on Monday and I was like not feeling it whatsoever. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's been better. But
that's good.
Hopefully you'll turn the corner.
Yeah. Well, midweek Thursday, I got back into it and I felt much better. Yeah. But this running thing's a mind blender, dude. It's like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back so frequently. It's weird.
Yeah. It's just like consistency. You got to get out there. It's rough sometimes. But why don't we put a pin in the notable hikes? We'll push that to next week. And then you want to do a segment about some gyms in the Waterville Valley area?
Yeah, I did some research. My intention for the summer is really to get out and do some backpacking in some areas that we haven't covered really at all, whether it be down south or up north country. But until I get to do that, I figured, you know what, let me hone in on Waterville one more time, do some digging and see if there's anything that might be different that people haven't heard of. I'm sure people have heard of some of these, but maybe they forgot, and it's worth a revisit. So here are 10 that I came up with that are really worth the visit. And more or less, you can avoid the big crowds, unlike the 48 and whatever else. So, number 1, Fletcher Cascade. This is off of Drake's Brook Trailhead, which is off of Route 49, exit 28. It's a short mileage hike that gets you to a really large band of cascades, and at the very top of this, you get this beautiful view of the valley, and it's particularly nice after a heavy rain or in the spring. So that's a really nice hike. Have you ever been up there, Mike?
I haven't. I haven't even heard of it, actually. So,
okay.
It's all new to me.
Yep. So Drake's Brook is where you can go up to Jennings Peak or Sandwich Dome. So it's a little spur off of that area. So check it out. It's on one of the sides of Flat Mountain. Let's put it that way. So
okay.
It's number 2. Norway Rapids. This is a beautiful basin-like place where people go swimming and take a nice cold dip. And this is off of Livermore Trailhead. So basically, you're hiking Livermore to Cascade Path, and then you take the Norway Rapids Trail. And it looks sort of squarish, rectangular-ish, and it's a nice little spot to go check out. Number 3.
Yeah, another one I haven't heard of, Stomp, so I'm impressed.
All right, we're on a roll. You've heard of this next one. Number 3 is East Ponds Loop.
Yep.
Have you done this one?
I haven't, but I'm aware of it.
Okay, so this is one of our favorites, and this is off Tripoli Road, which, as you know, is open now. It's sort of in the middle of the traverse of Tripoli Road, and at the East Ponds Loop trailhead, it's a 4.8-mile loop, and you pass 2 beautiful mountain ponds, and they are really beautiful. They're on the sort of the lower edge of the Scar Ridge peaks. And you can do it counterclockwise or clockwise, depending on which one you want to do. And this is a really beautiful hike, short miles, if you're doing an out and back, and definitely a place to go visit in the fall with the foliage.
Okay.
Absolutely beautiful. I did want to throw in a bushwhack or two. So here's one that...
You're always throwing in a bushwhack or two.
Well, here's what's funny. It's like when people think Waterville, they think, okay, Tecumseh, Osceola... Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They think it's very little, but if you look 4 corners, you're talking about Sandwich Dome, the Weetamoos, Welch Dickey, then all the way over the Kate Sleeper by Passaconaway. This is a massive area.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, they assume those peaks are approached from where you get the 4,000 footers of the 52 with the views, but really Waterville is coming in from Waterville is the opposite direction, the path less traveled in a lot of these situations.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, less crowds, less traffic.
Yep.
It's really neat. Fool Killer. This is a small sub-peak just below the Tri-Pyramids on the... is it the Kangamangas side? I believe it's the Kangamangas side.
It is, yeah. So when you go, Sabaday Falls, and then it extends into Sabaday Brook Trail. I've been over here in the winter, and it was so tempting, because you sort of on Sabaday Brook Trail, you come so close to the Fool Killer, but we were kind of on a mission that day to get, it was going to be a long hike out Pine Bend, so we didn't do it. But certainly in the summertime, I don't think it's unreasonable to do that loop as a, Sabaday Brook out to the Fool Killer, Tri-Pyramids, and then out Pine Bend is definitely doable in a day.
Yeah, this was one of my first bushwhacks, actually. So basically up Sabaday Falls Trail at 2,700 feet, there's a sharp 90-degree turn that crosses over the brook. And at that point, you can just bushwhack straight up to the summit register. It's maybe another 500 or 600 feet up, and there's a nice register up top. Neat bit of history there. In the early settling days, people would try to get to the Tri-Pyramids, and they would summit the Fool Killer thinking that was the summit of the Tri-Pyramids, and it wasn't the case. Nobody's died there historically, as far as I know, but that's a really nice, modest bushwhack off of Sabaday. Number 5, Greeley Ponds. I have to mention it again because it is stunning. Again, it's beautiful out there.
We're going to have to rename this Mr. and Mrs. Stomp Pond.
Yeah, it's getting there. That's in our bucket list, is to get out to Greeley. She hasn't yet to see it. I've seen it once, and it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So what's nice about these ponds, you're surrounded by several cliffs. You have Greeley Cliffs. You have the cliffs on Mount Kangamangas, titled K1 and K2, and then just below East Osceola, you have the Painted Cliff, which is the most unusual thing I've ever seen in the Whites. It's just a big cliff wall, but it's circular and reddish, and it looks like something you'd see out west or in the desert. It's very, very cool. So this one you can get to via the Kangamangas, which is the shorter method, or you can start at the Livermore Trailhead. As a point-to-point traverse, you're talking about 5.3 miles total.
Okay.
So from Livermore Trailhead to Upper Greeley Pond, it's 3.9 miles. So that's the difference to the Kank. So,
okay,
but gentle, nothing too crazy. Here's one that we don't hear of too often. Number 6, Flat Mountain Pond and Shelter. There are 2 approaches, and they come in from the Sandwich side. So Sandwich, the town of Sandwich, which is closer to, say, Ferncroft, your access to Whiteface and Passaconaway and all that. But this is a high mountain pond at 2320, and there's a beautiful shelter up there. If you're doing your research for this one, look for the Whiteface Intervale Road, which is the eastern exit, or the Bennett Street Gate, which is the western. The shelter itself is located at the south end of the pond, and there is a bushwhack up to the northwest over Flat Mountain, which would essentially take you back over to Fletcher Cascade, which we had just talked about.
Yep.
And then there's another Flat Mountain peak there as well, which are both on the highest 500 list. Nice area.
Yeah, it is a nice area. And basically, like if you're hiking Sandwich Dome I'm familiar from Sandwich Dome, but one thing I will say is that if you're going to go on a weekend, just don't be surprised. Like there can be crowds there because it's not a long hike to get in there, and it's not a lot of elevation. So sometimes you'll get some crowds in there. It's like anywhere else with shelters, but I think this one's a little bit. It's accessible from the Livermore side. So, not the Livermore side, from the south, the Ferncroft area.
Okay. All right, number 7. Noon Peak. So people that have gone up to Jennings or Sandwich Dome may know this peak, but if you're looking for a shorter round trip of 3.2 miles hike, Noon Peak is phenomenal. It's right off of the same area. You could start at Drake's Brook, the same spot where you would go in to see Fletcher Cascade. And this takes you up to a beautiful series of flattish, open, couple scrambles here and there, but literally just flat open granite with just beautiful views of the Whites and Sandwich Dome. And it's a very steep ascent to get to this area, but what a great payoff. So that's one you can do some research on. And if you were motivated, you can continue on to Jennings and Sandwich Dome, of course, as well. Number 8. Here's another sort of bushwhackish / herd pathish traverse. So Acteon Ridge off of 49. It's some of it's advanced in terms of bushwhacking, but to get to say the Route 49 side, Bald Knob, that's not too bad at all. It takes a little bit of research to find out how to get into these areas. Sachem Peak as well. If you're starting on 49, you can head right up to Bald, and essentially there's the Smarts Brook Trailhead, which people are pretty familiar with, and you're taking the Yellow Jacket Trail. The first footbridge, that's where you want to look at going up stream, following a little brook, and that's the beginning of the bushwhack. And then from there, you'll actually discover some cairns and some trail markers and things. If you're coming down from Jennings, heading towards Sachem Cliffs, so you'd be taking the Smarts Brook Trail, and then jumping off. I forget the elevation exactly, but that'll get you over to Sachem Cliffs, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, you love that area, Stomp.
Oh, yeah.
You introduced me to that last year, and I'm looking forward to getting back over there in the summer.
Oh, it's awesome. It's super cool. Now, number 9. The Sleepers, these guys are nestled between the Tri-Pyramids and Whiteface, and you can access the Sleepers pretty directly from Downsbrook, which is off of the Kank. You can make it a little longer by starting at Whiteface or in Waterville itself by taking the South Tri-Pyramid route up to South Tri-Pyramid and then grabbing them. It's just, it's really neat. They're long and very remote and just very, very, very beautiful, very scenic. So Kate Sleeper Trail. And then last but not least, number 10 is the Algonquin. It's a long one. You and I did it last year, and it's beautiful. You can access Algonquin Trail from Sandwich Notch Road, or again from Drake's Brook. A lot of starts at Drake's Brook. The Sandwich Mountain Trail. The full range of easy to difficult with amazing views of Black Mountain, Welch Dickey, Guinea Pond, and Acteon Ridge. Guinea Pond's another neat one because that whole side of Algonquin connects over to Flat Mountain, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Stomp,
So-
you've definitely opened my eyes up to this area a lot more. Like I know you'd always talk about it, and I would be like, well, yeah, it sounds okay. But like when I got in there, I was really impressed. And I think between, the approaches from Livermore and then the approaches from that Algonquin, Noon Peak area, like there's just in Flat Pond and Sandwich, there's so much ground to cover over there.
Yeah, so enjoy. And,
No crowds.
Yeah, let's expand the horizons. My goal is to really get out there a little further away from the comfortable home neighborhood here.
Yeah, definitely. So
All right.
I'll include all of these as a list in the show notes so people can do some research. And then just, if you got questions, hit up the Instagram account. Stomp loves chatting.
Sure. I sure do. Excellent. All right. So we have one more sponsor, and then we're getting into search and rescue. So Bay Slate Coasters. They create unique, beautiful, functional, and expertly laser-engraved coasters with topographic maps of the 4,000 footers of New Hampshire and more. These coasters are handmade on Cape Cod from slate, quarried in the United States, and provide a durable and heat-resistant surface for your drinks. Each coaster features intricate detailing of any mountain topography for the location of your choice. So Bay Slate Coasters will work with you on your custom hand-designed coasters for any street or topographic map. Let's just say anywhere on Earth or beyond. Visit bayslate.com today to explore a full range of topographic map coasters and use the code SLASR10 at checkout for 10% off your first order. That's SLASR10.
Excellent Stomp. So Bay Slate Coasters, a great option for people if they're looking to give a gift.
Oh, absolutely. For Father's Day, that's probably a great idea.
Yeah, I might have to drop a reminder to somebody for that one. So it's a good idea. Okay, so now moving on to recent search and rescue news, Stomp. So we got two national stories. So you pulled these, so I may ask your help for them. But this first one's a national a story. Two hikers passed away.
Slot Canyon.
Yeah, so they died in a rushing wall of water after flood carried them down a Utah canyon for miles. So it looks like two older gentlemen here. So they were found dead after flash flooding carried them down a canyon. Kane County Sheriff's Office said it received a call on Sunday, May 21st about a group hiking in the Paria River on their way to Lee's Ferry when they found a dead man in the canyon. He was south of the junction of the Paria River in Buckskin Gulch, about a half mile into Arizona. So right on the line there. It's a very rugged area there. I've been out there a couple times, and it's you do not mess around with the flash flooding there. But the Arizona authorities joined the recovery efforts along with the Sheriff's Office and Utah Department of Public Safety. The man had no ID on him, so deputies said they began looking at vehicles at the various trailheads to figure out who he was. The next day, Sheriff's Office got a call about two overdue hikers from an Ohio police department. So the men's family said they'd not spoken to the two gentlemen since Saturday afternoon. They intended to hike 5 miles into Wire Pass in the Buckskin Gulch. So photos from the family confirmed that the man found dead in Paria was a 65-year-old gentleman from Westchester Township, Ohio. SAR teams began combing the Buckskin Gulch area and unfortunately found the other missing man, a 72-year-old man from Kettering, Ohio, deceased as well. So downstream towards the junction with the Paria River, they found the second man's body. So the Sheriff's Office said the investigation showed that while the men were hiking, they were caught by surprise and swept away by the rushing wall of water. So they were carried about 10 miles down the canyon. Well, one of them was carried about 10 miles, and the other was carried 7 or 8 miles.
So that's terrifying.
Crazy story.
I know, and it happens so frequently there. So I have I guess Bearskin Gulch is 16 miles. So how do you say, I'm going to go do this hike? How do you prepare? prepare for it? How do you prepare for this other than looking at the weather and hoping for the best?
I don't know. I get claustrophobic just thinking about like getting, I have a little bit, I mean, when I was in Sedona, like Oak Creek, like you could certainly, you know, you could see, like you'd be in the creek and you could look over to the right and the left and you could see like the damage from the flash floods that come through that are like, it turns a creek that's like literally the size of like maybe your arm length that you're walking in or around. It turns it into like the Merrimack River distance, like within, you know, but it's a couple times a year. But if you get caught, you know, at the wrong time, then you're in big trouble. So like that sounds like that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I am really curious though. Like, are there strategies to help yourself if you find yourself in this situation? I don't know. But
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. All right, so moving into the Adirondack. So rangers rescue hikers lost on dark, snowy Adirondack Trail. They also force illegal dumpers to clean up a mess. So let's see what this is all about. So May 20th, hiking party of 3 activated an emergency beacon on Phelps Trail east of Little Marcy in the Adirondack. So they couldn't make phone contact. The Environmental Conservation, those Department of Environmental Conservation forest rangers set out to find them. They were able to reach them at 1 a.m. about 6 miles
5 days ago
into a hike. Yeah, this is 5 days ago. So the rangers found the disoriented hikers on the trail. After treating the hikers for mild hypothermia, the rangers helped carry their gear down the mountain, and by the morning, they had reached Johns Brook Outpost, where the rangers continued to warm them up before getting to the trailhead. So I guess they were okay. They just had mild hypothermia, and then when the rangers got there, they were able to treat them to the point where they could hike out. They were on a 3-day trip, but they didn't check the weather forecast or turn around when they encountered more snow than they could handle. So
4 feet?
Yeah. So the Forest Service is encouraging hikers to check the weather forecast and know their limitations. So I guess at the same time here, or maybe this is a separate report.
I'm not sure if we need to cover that. But
Okay,
people are making a mess. So
yeah, somebody dumped trash in the Adirondacks. Don't do that.
yeah, and going local.
So we got 2 local rescues here. So injured hiker on Gorge Brook Trail in Benton. So I think this was on. Yeah, this is the day that we were hiking. Matter of fact, I was looking over at Moosilauke and it was like completely like socked in by clouds. There was no views to be had that day. So
Right.
it was ridiculous, but and it was weird because like all the other summits were clear, but like there was just like clouds stuck to Moosilauke. I don't know why, but around 2:15 on Saturday, May 20th, Fish and Game was alerted to an injured hiker a little up over 2 miles up Gorge Brook Trail from the Ravine Lodge in Woodstock. So the report came through the 911 from the hiking party saying one of their members had suffered a lower leg injury and couldn't continue. So rescue team comprised of conservation officers and 15 volunteers from PEMI Search and Rescue were staged at Ravine Lodge, and by 4:30 the first rescuers had arrived on the scene. So it looks like the injured hiker was packaged up in a litter and carried about 2 miles to the lodge. So call came in at 2:15. They got to the hiker at 4:30 and then arrived at 7 back at the ambulance. So 25-year-old gentleman from Lynn, Massachusetts. So that's ironic. We were just talking about Lynn last week.
Yeah, Lynn.
Novice hiker and had slipped. Yeah.
Quick turnaround.
Yeah, not bad.
But you're right, though. The weather that day was pretty cool and chilly. And, the rain was coming in that afternoon.
In the afternoon, yeah. I think it didn't come in till 4 o'clock or something?
Yeah. But not great conditions if you're sitting there on the side of a mountain waiting for people.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, how would I describe it? I would just say I don't know, overcast.
Yeah, dreary.
Dreary, that's a good one. Dreary. All right, so the next one, again, dreary weather in this one. So rescued hiker on Mount Passaconaway. So this is an interesting one, Stomp, because I was reading this one, and this was an experienced hiker that was well prepared, but unfortunately, because of a fall into a brook. All of her gear got wet. So we'll talk about this one. So 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, Fish and Game responded to a call for assistance from a stranded hiker on the Dicey's Mill Trail, approximately a half mile from the summit of Mount Passaconaway. So this hiker, 28 years old, from Fall River, Massachusetts, was hiking with her dog when she called 911 for assistance. So this hiker had departed early that morning from Route 112 and had hiked the Downs Brook Trail to Mount Tri-Pyramid and then over to Mount Whiteface, and then she encountered snow and rain during her hike. The hiker had several brook crossings, one of which she fell into, which resulted in her backpack and all of her equipment becoming saturated. So she was on the Dicey's Mill Trail near Mount Passaconaway when she attempted to set up her tent and stay warm in her sleeping bag, but she couldn't get the tent set up properly and became concerned due to the increased rain. I mean, that must be just demoralizing if everything is wet and you're trying to set it up, and it's just, I can imagine. So she did the right thing, called for assistance, and 6:30 the call came in. They talked with her on the phone, and it was determined the best course of action was to hike to her location and assist her. So they were able to get to her location around, I guess, at night. And I guess she made it all the way back to the trailhead by 11:35. So the Fish and Game said she was well prepared for the conditions, experienced hiker that had planned for the weather and an extended stay. She had all the 10 essentials, including rain gear and everything she needed, sleeping bag, tent, etc. But she did not expect to fall in the brook, and then all of her equipment became wet, and she got concerned for her safety. So it was a good call that she made the call, and ultimately, the whole situation would have been worse if she didn't have that equipment. But It's an interesting, Stomp, is like everything just went south.
Yep. Just like that. Boom.
Yeah.
So any solutions?
I mean, the best thing that I heard is that people just basically said, like, look, put your stuff, if there's any hint of brook crossings or rain or snow that might get your backpack wet and the gear inside of it, use a trash compactor bag and put everything inside the trash compactor bag inside the backpack, so you've got double peace of mind.
Or a dry bag. I think they sell them for pretty cheap at Walmart, and they're light. Yeah.
I think that the Dyneema backpacks as well are a little bit more resilient, so it's worth spending a little bit of extra money to get one of those heavy duty Dyneema bags that are generally pretty waterproof, but even those aren't 100%. So I think the compactor bag, those heavy duty trash compactor bags to keep your critical gear dry, or a dry bag, whatever works, I would suggest.
Yeah, so that's great for when there's rain forecast, but if you're approaching areas with a lot of brook crossings or higher water, with the risk of falling in is higher, perhaps even storing a bivvy, those small handheld bivvies in a waterproof bag, just in case you are waiting for a search and rescue and you need to get some body warmth without necessarily staying longer. But interesting story for sure.
It is. Glad that she made it out, Stomp. And I think that we're going to make it out of here with episode 107 and call this a wrap.
It's a wrap. Okay. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. Everybody stay safe out there. I know everyone wants to meet Stomp, but don't meet him on a rescue.
That's right. I'll be looking for you. Next time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASRPodcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words that describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hill!
Here's Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.